Have you ever felt the weight of someone else's agenda pressing down on your shoulders, squeezing out your voice until it's barely a whisper? That silent pressure, whether from a domineering boss, a manipulative partner, or the relentless chorus of your own inner critic, can turn every conversation, every negotiation, into a battleground where you play the losing side. But imagine for a moment that you could flip that script in just 25 minutes, transform yourself from a passive piece on someone else's chessboard into the strategist who calls the shots. Picture waking each morning knowing that no one can shove you around, no hidden currents can sweep you off course, and no unsolicited demands can erode your sense of self. This isn't wishful thinking. It's a precise Machiavellian roadmap, distilled for our hectic, hyper-connected era, that reveals how to claim your personal sovereignty and never be dominated by anyone ever again. In a world that celebrates team spirit and collaboration, we're taught to blend in, to conform, to lower our defenses so that harmony can reign. But that same drive for peace often masks a far more insidious truth. The very people who smile beside you at brunch might be jockeying for power behind the scenes. Maybe it's the friend who always forgets your needs, subtly guilt-tripping you into favors. Maybe it's the colleague who interrupts every time you speak, unconsciously, or not, diminishing your contributions. Maybe it's the relentless voice in your head that whispers you're not good enough unless you bend to expectations. You're not powerless by accident, you're up against invisible currents. And until you learn to recognize them, they will continue to steer your choices, your confidence, even your fate. This is the crux of our existential dilemma. Do we accept the role of victim, buffeted by other people's whims, or do we dare to step onto a different stage, one where we write the script and control the narrative? It's tempting to think that surrendering our will in exchange for comfort, peace at the expense of autonomy, is a fair trade. But what if that comfort is just a gilded cage? A momentary lull that stifles growth, ambition, and self-respect? You might tell yourself you're fine with the status quo because it's less messy, less risky. Yet a quiet voice within you stirs, an itch that never goes away, reminding you that true fulfillment demands more than the hollow calm of compliance. Enter Niccolò Machiavelli, the Florentine political philosopher notorious for cold ambition and ruthless tactics. Most of us imagine him conjuring tyrants and puppeteering courts with iron fists. But peel back the layers, and you discover something far subtler. Machiavelli wasn't just a student of power's darkest shadows, he was a seeker of inner mastery. He observed how perception shapes reality, how alliances can protect freedom as much as they can shackle it, how anticipation makes the weak leap ahead of the strong, and how mastering one's own emotions is the most overlooked form of dominion. He mapped a path not for oppressors, but for anyone who refuses to be oppressed again. Right now, you stand at a crossroads. One direction leads deeper into the well-worn grooves of deference and doubt, where the same patterns repeat themselves until you forget what it felt like to be truly free. The other direction guides you toward a strategic sovereignty, a place where you hold the reins, where subtle shifts in posture, speech, and mindset carve out a space that no one can invade. And here's the promise: by investing just 25 minutes of focused work each day, you can learn to skin the unseen battleground, craft a persona that commands respect organically, alchemize your emotions into instruments of influence, forge alliances that bolster rather than bind, anticipate moves before they happen, and cement your authority in the routine of your own design. This journey is urgent. Power vacuums don't stay empty forever. The longer you linger in uncertainty, the more opportunities slip through your fingers, opportunities to negotiate with confidence, to speak without trembling, to walk into rooms and shift the room's energy with a single glance. Every second you allow others to define you, they erode a sliver of your potential. But the beauty of this Machiavellian method is its precision. No grandiose manifesto, no years of mystical training, just a sequence of clear, actionable steps you can integrate today, tomorrow, and the day after, until the idea of being overtaken by someone else's will become unthinkable. As we unravel this roadmap, you will realize that true domination is an illusion. No one can claim absolute power over another unless we hand it over willingly. The real battlefield is woven into every glance, every word, every pulse of emotion. And it's precisely in that invisible realm where your freedom lies waiting. We'll begin by illuminating the hidden terrain, the unseen power zones where social, emotional, and professional dominance take root. Once you know their architecture, you can dismantle them or, better yet, reconfigure them in your favor. Along the way, you'll confront a fundamental tension: authenticity versus performative power. Do you have to don a mask to be respected? Machiavelli would argue that perception often precedes reality, that the gowns, the voices, the handshakes we adopt shape how others respond to us and even how we respond to ourselves. But don't worry, we won't be teaching you to become a hollow actor. You'll align your core intentions with a refined persona that radiates confidence without betrayal of self. This is where many trips up. They see authority as a cruel game. Here, you'll discover it as an art of harmony between interior conviction and exterior presence. Then comes the emotional alchemy, the art of transforming reactive bursts of anger, fear, or doubt into measured responses that guide outcomes rather than derail them. We'll show you a 3-step formula: observe, contain, redirect, that lets you turn your most volatile reactions into strategic tools. You'll learn why vulnerability can be a secret weapon, why the occasional glimpse of your humanity can actually amplify your influence, and how to keep your cool when the world around you erupts in chaos. But no sovereign stands alone. We'll explore the architecture of alliances, how to forge bonds that amplify your power without chaining you to someone else's ambitions. You'll meet 3 alliance archetypes from Machiavelli's own playbook, updated for modern networks and digital tribes, so you can build a support structure that strengthens your autonomy rather than tethering you to new masters. Once alliances are in place, anticipation becomes your ultimate leverage. You'll see why reading intentions and predicting outcomes is less about psychic ability and more about disciplined observation and strategic pause. We'll unpack Machiavelli's secret technique for foreseeing moves before they're made, giving you the freedom to choose your response rather than being forced into reaction. Finally, we'll distill everything into a daily ritual, 25 minutes of focused practice that anchors you in awareness, presence, and strategic intent. This ritual ensures that every day, you reinforce your newfound sovereignty, bit by bit, until power stops being a distant goal and becomes your natural state of being. When was the last time you felt utterly controlled? Maybe it was just this morning, when someone dismissed your idea in a meeting. Maybe it was yesterday, when guilt pushed you into a favor you couldn't afford. Maybe it's that lingering self-doubt that creeps up when you glance in the mirror. Whatever it is, hold on to that feeling, because by the end of this journey, you'll look back on it as the moment you decided enough was enough. The shadow of someone else's will no longer darken your path. In the moments to come, we'll begin to map the invisible battlefield, revealing the 3 zones of domination that have been quietly dictating your limits. You'll discover the first key insight: how perception becomes power, how the subtlest shift in how you're seeing can realign the entire power dynamic in your favor. That discovery will be your first step toward reclaiming space, mental, emotional, and social, that has long been occupied by other people's expectations. So take a breath. Steel your resolve. The world you know is poised to change, not because you'll seize power over others, but because you'll seize power over yourself. Your passive acquiescence ends here. In the next few pages, we'll guide you to become the sovereign of your own experience, the architect of your interactions, the strategist of your destiny. And in just 25 focused minutes a day, you'll craft a fortress of autonomy so solid that no tide of coercion, manipulation, or intimidation can ever breach its walls again. Querito espectador. Confira se você ainda está inscrito no canal. Às vezes, a inscrição pode ser cancelada automaticamente, então é sempre bom verificar. Aproveite e se torna membro do canal. Como membro, você terá benefícios incríveis, como assistir aos nossos conteúdos semanais. Além disso, você pode apoiar nosso trabalho sendo financiador do canal com value. Isso ajuda-nos permite investir em ferramentas melhores e elevar a qualidade de produção dos nossos conteúdos. Junte-se a nós nessa jornada e faça parte de nossa comunidade. E compartilhe gente aí nos comentários de que cidade você está escutando esta história e que horas são por aí agora. Part 1. Mapping the invisible battlefield. Every conversation you enter, every glance exchanged, is more than idle chatter or polite acknowledgement. It's a skirmish in an unseen arena where alliances form, power shifts, and invisible lines demarcate who leads and who follows. Imagine walking into a room full of people you've never met. You greet one person, and without a word, a subtle tilt of their head communicates curiosity or indifference. You sense a hesitation in their posture, an invitation or a silent challenge. That moment, as fleeting as it seems, exposes the first battleground, perception. Until you learn to recognize these silent signals, you remain at the mercy of other people's unspoken agendas. Underneath every handshake, beneath every compliment, a network of hidden rules dictates who walks away directing the narrative and who ends up nodding in agreement. Machiavelli taught us to see power not as a blunt weapon but as a fluid substance that flows through gestures, tone, and timing. Those who claim authority aren't always the loudest in the room. Often they're the ones who understand the invisible architecture of influence. They know which zones to occupy and when to step back so the other person feels heard, only to discover later that they've unwittingly ceded ground. Recognizing these zones is the first step in reclaiming your sovereignty. These zones are threefold: social, emotional, professional. In the social zone, reputations are built and shattered by whispers, glances, and the perceived closeness to power. In the emotional zone, our feelings betray us, revealing vulnerability or surprising strength. In the professional arena, knowledge and expertise confer authority, but only if you can present them convincingly. None of these zones operates in isolation. They overlap, collide, and reinforce one another. Identifying the contours of each domain is like drawing a map of a battlefield before engaging. The more precise your chart, the fewer surprises you'll face. Take the social zone. It's ruled by subtle hierarchies, by the unspoken questions: who belongs here? Who commands respect? Think of the colleague who casually drops the name of a high-ranking manager in every conversation. Each mention is a claim on social status, a reminder to the group that they're connected to corridors of influence. If you don't notice these morsels of code, you might remain on the outskirts of every opportunity. The key is not to compete in the same arena, unless you choose to, but to understand which social currencies matter in that moment. Meanwhile, the emotional zone is even more treacherous. Here, your own inner currents, fear, doubt, pride, become weapons turned against you. Imagine debating a point and feeling a sudden surge of defensiveness. Your jaw tightens, your voice rises, and your opponent sees an opening. They press harder, not to hear your argument but to watch you unravel. In contrast, if you train yourself to observe that emotional spike as if it belonged to someone else, you can contain it, let it cool, and then redirect the conversation with calm precision. In doing so, you reclaim power from your own impulses. Then there's the professional zone, where competence and credibility matter, but only when coupled with the perception of authority. A brilliant idea, poorly delivered, dies before it sees the light. Conversely, a mediocre proposal, packaged with confidence and strategic structure, can reshape a boardroom strategy for months. Machiavelli taught that substance and style are inseparable. The mask you wear must amplify the content you carry. Recognizing this blend allows you to step into any setting and project expertise that others instinctively respect. These three zones, social, emotional, professional, interweave like the roots of an ancient tree, each feeding into the other. A social slight can trigger an emotional reaction that undermines your professional posture. A professional misstep can erode your social standing and inflame self-doubt. Mapping their interactions reveals the unseen currents that tug at your decisions and sense of self. Once you chart that invisible landscape, you're free to choose where to anchor your presence and where to let other people's momentum dissipate harmlessly around you. At the heart of this hidden battlefield lies a more insidious opponent, your own unexamined assumptions. We all carry mental shortcuts, beliefs about how people should behave, who deserves respect, what constitutes authority. These assumptions create blind spots. They're the reason you might overlook the subtle signs of a manipulative friend or dismiss the tiny cracks in a competitor's facade. Machiavelli warned that the gravest mistakes come not from our enemies but from our failure to question our own convictions. By interrogating these internal narratives, you begin to dismantle the traps that have kept you reactive rather than proactive. Shifting from a reactive bystander to a strategic observer begins with a simple practice: pause and catalog the sensations, micro-expressions, and tonal shifts you experience in any encounter. Treat each meeting like a reconnaissance mission. What signals did you pick up? Which interactions left you feeling diminished, and why? Document these patterns, and you'll start to see where power accumulates and where it leaks away. Observation, in this sense, is not passive. It's the foundation of every strategic maneuver you'll execute thereafter. As you refine this observational muscle, you'll discover that the most powerful moves often happen before you say a single word. The angle of your gaze, the tempo of your breathing, the subtle modulation in your tone, all these factors align to shape how others anticipate your next step. By controlling your own signals, you guide the flow of interaction, nudging it toward outcomes that serve your interests. You become less of a participant and more of an unseen director, orchestrating the scene from behind the curtain. In practice, you might start by arriving a few minutes early to any gathering. Use that time not for last-minute rehearsal but for silent scouting. Who occupies the center of conversation? Who seems marginalized? What spatial arrangements hint at alliances? Even the placement of chairs tells a story of who commands the room. With this information, you enter not as an uncertain guest but as a strategist with actionable intelligence. You know where to position yourself, in the line of sight of key influencers or in the periphery where you can observe and choose when to engage. But even meticulous mapping means nothing if you don't adapt quickly. Battles are not static. The terrain shifts with every comment and gesture. Suppose your initial reading of the emotional temperature in a meeting proves off. perhaps a project lead seems calm until a small tease about their last presentation flips their mood. Recognizing that pivot gives you an immediate opportunity, you can address their pride, diffuse their defensiveness, or redirect the discussion into terrain where your ideas thrive. Each moment of insight into someone else's state is a chance to assert subtle control. Of course, this approach demands ruthless self-honesty. You have to admit when you misread a situation, examine why your model failed, and adjust your map. That process can feel uncomfortable, like watching every misstep magnified under a microscope. But this very discomfort is the price of sovereignty. If you're unwilling to confront your blind spots, you remain a pawn, subject to whoever claims the higher vantage point. Embrace the unease, and it becomes fuel for your transformation. The stakes of staying passive are unmistakable. In the social domain, it means watching opportunities pass you by, promotions, partnerships, invitations to high-level circles. In the emotional sphere, it means being hijacked by fear or resentment, forced to apologize for reactions that reveal insecurity. In the professional realm, it means brilliant work gathering dust because you never learned how to position it in front of the right eyes. Without a deliberate mapping of this invisible landscape, you remain at the mercy of external forces, defined by other people's narratives instead of your own. Yet mapping alone doesn't grant victory. It's the first move in a larger game of strategic presence. Machiavelli's genius lay not only in diagnosing the architecture of power but in showing us how to occupy it with integrity. He understood that the most formidable leaders blend authenticity with performance, staying true to core intentions while sculpting a persona that others instinctively respect. The battlefield's contours may be invisible, but your footprint need not be. You can choose to leave a trace of confidence, curiosity, and calm authority in every space you enter. So take a moment now to reflect. Which of these three zones has been silently dictating your choices? Maybe it's the social web, those subtle alliances that pull you toward pleasing the wrong people. Perhaps it's the emotional undercurrents, an unexamined fear of judgment that leads you to shrink in critical moments. Or it could be the professional arena, where you know your skills shine but your delivery falls flat. Identifying that dominant zone is your first act of defiance against the invisible forces that limit you. As you prepare to claim that ground, remember, this is not about becoming a tyrant in your own life. It's about recognizing the rules of the game so you can choose whether to play, or to rewrite them entirely. You're not here to seize power from others, but to reclaim the authority that has always belonged to you. And once you see how perception weaves its threads into every glance and gesture, you'll understand why shaping how you're seen becomes the cornerstone of influence. In the next part, we'll explore that precise art, how to craft the arc of your persona so that respect and space come to you naturally, before you even speak a single word. Part 2. Crafting the arc of persona. Now that you've mapped the invisible battleground, you stand at the threshold of a new challenge, molding the face you present to that terrain. In every social encounter, in every professional negotiation, perception precedes reality. Before a single syllable escapes your lips, your posture, your expression, and the subtle rhythms of your speech have already begun to script how others will receive you. Too often, we mistake authenticity for raw exposure, believing that simply being ourselves guarantees respect. Yet in practice, an unshaped presence can feel like a blank canvas, vulnerable to the strokes of other people's expectations and judgments. The universal struggle here is clear. How do we project authority without sacrificing integrity? How do we wear a mask that both commands space and reflects the deepest currents of our true intentions? Machiavelli himself likened effective leadership to the art of sculpting marble, You cannot reveal the hidden form within until you first chip away the excess that obscures it. Those excesses are the hesitations, the self-doubts, the misread signals that whisper you're not enough long before you speak. Your task is to carve away that uncertainty until the essence of your authority shines through with crystalline clarity. This is not about deception or duplicity, it is about alignment, bringing the projection of your persona into harmony with your core values, so that every gesture resonates with both confidence and authenticity. When exterior signal and interior intent converge, you become the embodiment of your own strategic design. To guide this transformation, we'll explore 3 Machiavellian masks, 3 archetypal personae that, when adopted with sincerity, grant you instant respect and unspoken space in any environment. Each mask plays a distinct role in the theater of influence, and mastering all 3 ensures you can adapt fluidly to different circumstances. The first is the sovereign presence, the unshakable center around which others orbit. The second is the empathic strategist, the subtle guide who wins allegiance through tuned-in understanding. The third is the enigmatic catalyst, the unpredictable force that piques curiosity and commands attention. These are not rigid stereotypes but dynamic lenses through which you can amplify your natural strengths and guide how you are perceived. Imagine stepping into a room under the sovereign presence. Your spine lengthens, energy settles at your core, and your gaze sweeps the space with quiet assurance. In conversation, your voice falls into a calm, measured cadence, neither rushed nor trembling. You listen attentively, but not submissively. Your silence carries weight, as if your thoughts are treasures others must earn the right to uncover. This mask radiates stability. It says, I know my worth, and I respect yours, but I won't be hurried, overshadowed, or dismissed. The universal problem here is the jittery air of self-deprecation or overcompensation, leaning in too eagerly or recoiling in fear. By adopting the sovereign's posture and pacing, you neutralize that undercurrent of uncertainty, replacing it with an aura that subtly demands space and recognition. Yet authority alone can feel cold or aloof if overused. That's where the empathic strategist comes in, a mask that blends warmth with tactical insight. Here, your posture softens, your head tilts in genuine curiosity, your hands move in open gestures. You mirror the emotional contour of your interlocutor, creating rapport in moments. But beneath that empathy lies a meticulous observer, cataloging preferences, triggers, and unspoken desires. You nod at just the right interval, then pivot the conversation toward your objectives by framing them in terms of mutual benefit. The diagnosis of the underlying mechanism is simple: people follow those who seem to understand them. The potential pitfall, becoming a mere people-pleaser, evaporates when you remember that empathy is a tool, not a sacrifice of self. Wielded well, it becomes a bridge that carries your influence deeper into other minds. Then there's the enigmatic catalyst, perhaps the most counterintuitive mask of all. Here, unpredictability is your asset. You drop hints, an intriguing anecdote, a fleeting expression, that spark curiosity, leaving others wanting more. You share selectively, you reveal just enough to suggest depth, then pull back, creating a magnetic tension. This mask addresses the existential dilemma of novelty versus consistency. If you reveal every card at once, interest fades. If you are too consistent, you become predictable. The enigmatic catalyst dances on the edge of both, offering glimpses of your inner world without conceding full clarity. In doing so, you position yourself as both ally and challenge, a combination that commands attention and respect. Choosing which mask to wear depends on the currents of each interaction. In a formal boardroom presentation, the sovereign's calm command creates instant authority. During delicate negotiations or team-building scenarios, the empathic strategist forges trust and paves the way for collaboration on your terms. When you aim to shake loose stale dynamics or spark fresh engagement, perhaps in brainstorming sessions or networking events, the enigmatic catalyst disrupts the predictable equilibrium, making you the center of attention. The most powerful operators fluidly shift among these personae, reading the room like a script and stepping into the role that best serves their strategic aims. Yet even as you experiment with these masks, you must guard against the trap of thinking they're masks in the theatrical sense, mere costumes you slip on and off without bearing on who you are at your core. Machiavelli's twist is that the most effective masks aren't disguises but extensions of your genuine self. They are the parts of your personality you've suppressed or underutilized. Maybe you've always been a natural listener, but never realized that empathy could become a strategic asset. Maybe you hold a reservoir of calm confidence that seldom surfaces because you habitually apologize or qualify your ideas. The work here is to excavate those latent strengths, polish them through practice, and integrate them seamlessly so that your public persona and private intentions become one. Practical steps help anchor this integration. Begin each morning with a brief visualization. Choose which mask will guide you through the day's most important interactions. Picture yourself inhabiting that role. Feel the weight of the sovereign's responsibility, the warmth of the empathic strategist's resonance, or the fascinating half-lit intrigue of the enigmatic catalyst. As you visualize, note how your body shifts, shoulders drop or square, breath deepens or lightens, gaze softens or sharpens. Write down 3 small gestures or tonal adjustments you'll carry with you. Throughout the day, perform quick mental check-ins to ensure you remain aligned, recalibrating as needed. Consider the story of Elena, a mid-level manager in a tech firm who struggled to get her ideas heard. She was brilliant but soft-spoken, often overshadowed by louder colleagues. When she consciously adopted the sovereign presence, she noticed an immediate shift. During meetings, she paused before speaking, allowed her words to land, and maintained steady eye contact. Her colleagues stopped interrupting and began directing questions her way. Later, at a company retreat, she switched to the empathic strategist mask, weaving personal stories into her proposals, making team members feel seen and heard while subtly guiding them toward her vision. By the end of the retreat, Elena had secured a pilot project for one of her initiatives, an achievement that had eluded her for months. She never felt inauthentic because the new persona had emerged from qualities she had always possessed but never wielded strategically. Still, even with these successes, a persistent tension remains: authenticity versus performative power. You may ask yourself, am I betraying my true self by adopting these masks? The answer lies in redefining authenticity. It isn't the brute disclosure of every thought or emotion, it's the coherent expression of your core values and ambitions. Every public gesture, every carefully modulated tone, must serve the narrative you choose for your life. When your inner convictions and your outer signals align, authenticity becomes the bedrock of power, not its enemy. The real question is not whether you're being someone else, but whether the version you present is a faithful, enhanced projection of who you want to become. The transformation arc here is profound. You move from self-doubt, scribbling ideas so small they barely register, to confident projection, articulating your vision in a way that others instinctively trust. You cease apologizing for your presence and start claiming it, with dignity and strategic purpose. The process can feel vulnerable, like stepping onto a stage without a safety net, but that very discomfort signals growth. Each time you inhabit one of these masks with integrity, you carve out neural pathways that reinforce the new pattern until it becomes reflexive. Over time, these personae meld, forming a composite self that is both adaptable and unmistakably you. Before you adopt your chosen mask each day, pause to reflect. Which version of yourself answers the silent demand of this moment? If a conversation requires gentle persuasion, lean into the empathic strategist's open warmth. If an audience is primed to challenge your authority, embody the sovereign's unflappable poise. If you need to spark curiosity and break through stale routines, channel the enigmatic catalyst's hint of mystery. Which mask speaks your hidden aspirations, the part of yourself you're ready to amplify? Write that down. Let it guide your posture, modulate your tone, and shape the stories you tell. As you progress, you'll discover that these masks aren't isolated. They interact, reinforce, and sometimes overlap. You might open with the sovereign's calm command, transition into the strategist's empathetic questioning mid-discussion, and finish with an enigmatic flourish that leaves your audience wanting more. The fluidity of these transitions becomes your signature style, a dance of authority, connection, and intrigue that few can match. It's the difference between forcing your will and inviting others willingly into your orbit. And here's where the narrative twist deepens. Mastery of persona isn't the final destination, it's the gateway to the next level of influence. Once you can sculpt your presence at will, you free mental bandwidth to observe and shape deeper currents, the emotional tides that course beneath every interaction. The masks you wear will reveal new patterns in how people respond, exposing the hidden reactions that, when leveraged, become your greatest strategic assets. You'll no longer be at the mercy of your own emotional impulses or those of others. Instead, you'll navigate those currents as a seasoned captain reads the sea. So take a moment now to commit. Which mask will you embody first? Which qualities within you have been waiting for permission to emerge? As you step into that role, feel the micro-shifts in your physiology and mindset. Let each interaction become an experiment in strategic presence, a chance to refine your persona until it resonates with effortless authority. And as you perfect this art, prepare yourself for the next revelation, how to transform raw emotional reactions into controlled, directed influence, how to ride the tides of feeling rather than being drowned by them. The currents are rising, and soon you will learn to harness them with the same skill you now apply to shaping perception. Part 3, Emotional Alchemy, Turning Reaction into Control. You've honed the art of perception, sculpted your persona into a lens through which others instantly recognize your authority. Yet beneath the smooth exterior, a more volatile force waits to surge, your own emotions. Anger, fear, doubt, even fleeting pride, all these currents have the power to hijack your best-laid plans, to shatter the calm aura you've so carefully constructed. The universal challenge here is brutally simple. Our feelings rise without warning, and when they do, they demand our immediate attention. We either surrender, letting panic or outrage steer the ship, or we master them, converting raw reaction into deliberate influence. In this part, you'll learn why this emotional alchemy is not some esoteric secret but a clear three-step formula: observe, contain, redirect. That transforms your inner storms into the quiet catalysts of your strategic ascent. First, observe. Imagine for a moment that every emotion you feel is a color drifting across the sky of your awareness. Sometimes it's the scarlet streak of indignation, other times the gray haze of self-doubt. Most of us reflexively act when these colors flare, speaking before we think or withdrawing at precisely the wrong moment. Machiavelli's twist is that the greatest leaders train themselves to become impassive skywatchers. They note the hue, intensity, and duration, then step back. Why is this anger here? What does this fear protect? By labeling the sensation, this is frustration at being interrupted, or this is anxiety about tomorrow's pitch, you dissociate from the raw impulse. You see it as a phenomenon rather than an uncontrollable force. In practice, this means cultivating a split-second gap between trigger and reaction, a pause so slight it feels like a blink, yet powerful enough to shift you from reactive to reflective. Once you've observed the emotion, next comes the hardest part: contain. Think of containment not as repression but as channeling, like a river guided by levees instead of bursting its banks. You acknowledge the energy without allowing it to flood the room. When your heart thumps and your cheeks warm with indignation, you direct that energy inward. You might take a conscious breath, lengthening its arc until the tight knot in your chest loosens. You might adjust your posture, straighten your back, soften your gaze, so the nervous tremor in your limbs finds a more stable home. Containment is a form of self-command, a declaration that you control where your energy flows. It's the difference between flinching under pressure and standing firm, letting the emotion simmer in the background while your outer composure holds steady. In this crucible of pressure, you forge the internal discipline that separates victims of their feelings from masters of them. Finally, redirect. Here lies the alchemical magic. That same energy you contained can become the engine of influence. Anger, properly channeled, sharpens your focus. Anxiety, when harnessed, fuels anticipation. Doubt can become humility that disarms opponents and draws allies. The secret is to transform raw feeling into strategic action rather than emotional outburst. When you sense frustration building during a negotiation, you might redirect it into a pointed question: help me understand the root of your concern, steering the discussion toward clarity rather than conflict. If fear of social rejection gnaws at you before a presentation, convert that tension into preparation. Rehearse one more time, refine a slide, anticipate objections. Your internal pressure, once tamed, becomes your ally, pushing you to refine your strategy and deepen your presence. Consider the story of Marcus, a rising legal associate who found himself frozen whenever his senior partner challenged him in front of clients. His face burned, his voice shook, and he nearly lost control of the narrative he'd worked so hard to craft. By applying the observe, contain, redirect framework, he learned to catch the familiar rush of panic. This is the old fear of public failure. Contained it through a discreet foot massage under the table and a steadying inhalation, then redirected that pulse into an intentional slowdown of his speaking pace. The result? He regained control of the client meeting, answered tough questions with calm precision, and even steered the conversation back to his prepared points. Months later, that partner sought Marcus's input first, an unthinkable reversal of dominance. Underlying this process is the existential question: can vulnerability coexist with dominion? Traditional wisdom often frames vulnerability as weakness, a crack in the armor to be sealed. But Machiavelli's reinterpretation casts it as a nuanced tool. When you allow just a glimpse of your own emotional landscape, perhaps admitting, "I felt unsettled by that proposal," you humanize yourself. Others lower their guard, thinking, if they're willing to show a sliver of doubt, perhaps I can trust them. That brief transparency, contained within a controlled moment, becomes a strategic device that deepens rapport and forges unexpected loyalty. It flips the script, turning the expectation of unyielding strength into an invitation for genuine connection. Of course, mastery demands practice. You won't achieve seamless emotional alchemy on day one. Start small, in low-stakes interactions. Deliberately practice observing and naming your feelings. Journal the patterns you uncover, noting which triggers send you into overdrive. Next, in more challenging situations, feedback sessions, tense debates, apply containment techniques like pausing to breathe or consciously lowering the volume of your voice. Finally, experiment with redirection. channel your initial emotional surge into a clarifying question or a strategic concession that advances your broader aim. Track each instance. What worked? What backfired? What surprised you? Over weeks of disciplined effort, these techniques will migrate from conscious tactic to reflexive skill. Yet beware the trap of cold calculation. If you approach this process like a machine, the emotional currency loses its authenticity. The key is to remain genuinely present, using emotional alchemy not to manipulate but to align your actions with sincere intentions. When you observe and contain your feelings, do so with curiosity rather than cynicism. When you redirect, choose pathways that reflect your deeper values, not just immediate gain. This balance of strategic rigor and authentic engagement is what transforms a tactical maneuver into a lasting shift in your influence ecosystem. Emotional alchemy also reshapes how others see you. When colleagues notice that you remain composed under pressure, they start attributing to you qualities you might not even see in yourself: steadfastness, reliability, even wisdom. They begin to tailor their approach, leveling with you in moments of candor, deferring to you in moments of tension. Your composure becomes a gravitational field, drawing in trust and respect. Conversely, if you allow each emotional surge to spill out unchecked, you remain trapped in reactive cycles, apologizing for your outbursts, second-guessing your impulses, eroding the authority you've worked so hard to build. Emotional alchemy is the secret lever that tips this balance in your favor. Beyond one-on-one encounters, this mastery pays dividends in group dynamics. When discussions turn heated, your calm presence acts as a stabilizing force. You can mirror the emotional state of the group, offering empathy, then steer the collective energy toward constructive channels. A tense brainstorm becomes an intentional ideation session. A potential conflict transforms into a shared problem-solving moment. In boardrooms, your ability to transmute tension into focus marks you as a leader, whether or not you hold the highest title. People naturally rally around those who navigate turbulent waters with steady hands. But let's not ignore the flip side. Neglecting emotional alchemy leaves you vulnerable to manipulation. Opponents skilled in reading uncontained reactions will test you, provoking anger with barbed remarks, stoking insecurity with dismissive gestures. If you bite, you hand them the narrative, becoming the reactive foil to their composed scheme. By contrast, when you observe their provocation as a challenge to your equanimity, contain the frustration without feigning obliviousness, and redirect with a strategic question, you flip the dynamic entirely. The provocateur loses their edge. You emerge as the composed strategist steering the interaction. This practice also deepens your self-knowledge. Each trigger you encounter is a mirror reflecting an unhealed wound: fear of rejection, dread of failure, longing for approval. As you observe, contain, and redirect, you build not only tactical skill but emotional resilience. You learn which situations destabilize you, then gradually desensitize yourself by repeatedly applying the alchemical process. Over time, the very emotions that once felt like gaping chasms beneath your feet become manageable ripples on a pond. You step, not with trepidation, but with measured confidence. Ultimately, emotional alchemy is the linchpin that connects the art of persona with the architecture of alliances you'll explore next. Without controlling your internal currents, the persona you crafted and the networks you build will crumble under the slightest strain. But with this practice, you become the calm in any storm, the strategist who turns emotional turbulence into strategic advantage. You no longer fear your own feelings. Instead, you harness them to carve pathways toward your goals. So ask yourself now, when did your emotions last make you act against your own interest? Which triggers still lurk beneath the surface, ready to upend your authority? Pinpoint one recurring flashpoint. Perhaps it's the sting of criticism, the ache of being overlooked, or the bite of impatience under pressure. Commit to observing that trigger the next time it arises. Contain the surge with deliberate breath or posture. Redirect the energy toward a focused question or action that serves your long-term aim. In doing so, you will complete the alchemical transmutation from victim of emotion to master of influence. As you integrate these 3 steps, observe, contain, redirect, notice the shift in how interactions unfold. Tension no longer derails you, it becomes the spark that ignites strategic creativity. Conflict becomes a forge for deeper connections rather than a minefield to be avoided. And as you ride these emotional currents with grace and precision, you'll naturally draw alliances to your side, people who recognize in you a rare blend of strength and authenticity. In the next part, we'll delve into those strategic alliances, uncovering how to build bonds that amplify your equanimity rather than shackle you to new dependencies, and how 3 classic alliance archetypes can be adapted to amplify the emotional mastery you're now developing. You've learned to chart the hidden currents of power and sculpt your persona to navigate any room. You've mastered the alchemy of emotion, turning volatility into strategic fuel. Now comes a lesson no solitary strategist can afford to ignore: the art of alliances. True influence rarely emerges in isolation. It flourishes within networks of mutual benefit, where bonds amplify your reach without chaining you to another's will. Yet forging these connections carries a risk: dependency disguised as partnership, entanglement disguised as camaraderie. The line between strengthening your autonomy and surrendering it can be as fine as a whispered promise or a shared secret. In this part, we'll uncover how to weave alliances that elevate you, bonds without shackles, by adapting 3 timeless archetypes from Machiavelli's own playbook for our modern world. At its worst, alliance looks like a gilded cage. You lend your name to a cause, invest your energy in a relationship, and suddenly your identity becomes entangled with another's agenda. You find yourself defending positions you never chose, apologizing for moves you didn't make, feeling beholden to loyalties that erode your freedom. We've all been there, spending hours supporting a colleague's pet project, only to have them vanish once you've laid the groundwork, backing a friend's scheme, then shouldering the fallout when it backfires, pledging fealty to a mentor who demands more of your time and values than you can spare. These experiences leave a bitter aftertaste. What once felt like shared purpose turns into resentful labor, and you question whether any alliance is worth the risk. Machiavelli recognized that alliances are the currency of power. In his tumultuous Florence, he counseled princes to bind allies through shared interests, not through promises that carried more weight than gold. The strongest bonds, he argued, were not chains but bridges, structures built from reciprocal advantage, transparent expectations, and clear exits. In modern terms, that means treating alliances as strategic contracts of goodwill. You need enough connection to mobilize support, yet sufficient distance to break away if someone else's needs start to eclipse your own. Achieving that balance requires understanding the psychology of interdependence, the mutual exchange of resources, trust, and influence, calibrated so that neither party gains the upper hand to the detriment of the other. Consider the trap of overdependence. When you lean too heavily on a single ally, be it a powerful sponsor at work, an influencer in your social circle, or a charismatic peer in your industry, you risk losing your center. Your identity, your agenda, your decisions become filtered through their lens. A single misstep from them can ripple back to you, pulling you into their conflicts or controversies. Conversely, if you treat every relationship as disposable, you end up isolated, forced to fight each battle solo, governed by the whims of those who do hold alliances. The key lies in cultivating a diversified network of alliances, each bond designed to serve a distinct purpose and each structured with clear boundaries that preserve your sovereignty. Let's explore 3 archetypes of alliance that Machiavelli employed, adapted here for modern networks and digital tribes. The first is the collaborator, the peer whose skills complement your own and whose goals intersect with yours. This alliance thrives on equality and shared risk. You co-create projects, share insights, and offer mutual support when challenges arise. The collaborator succeeds when both parties win, and its power comes from collective momentum. But beware complacency. When collaborators grow too comfortable, they can begin to assume each other's contributions as entitlements, breeding stagnation. Regularly revisit the terms of engagement. What are you each bringing to the table? How will success be measured? When you treat collaboration as a living contract, you prevent drift and keep the partnership dynamic. Next is the patron, the mentor or sponsor who holds resources you lack, access to decision makers, specialized knowledge, or financial backing. A patron alliance can accelerate your trajectory, catapulting you into opportunities that solo effort might never yield. Yet such alliances risk turning into patronage, where favors flow only in one direction, and your loyalty becomes a commodity. Machiavelli would warn you to balance gratitude with autonomy. Seek a patron not as a master to serve unconditionally, but as a strategic benefactor whose interests align with yours. Offer value in return, fresh perspectives, diligent execution, or loyalty on agreed terms. And maintain secondary streams of support, other mentors, network contacts, self-generated projects, so that no single patron's departure ever leaves you bereft. Finally, the coalition builder, someone who gathers disparate parties around a shared vision, forging multi-layered alliances that transcend dyadic ties. In the coalition, you act as both hub and facilitator, connecting individuals whose combined strengths create something greater than the sum of its parts. Think of a project team drawn from marketing, engineering, and operations, each department holding expertise the others lack. Your role is to orchestrate their contributions, align incentives, and manage tensions so that collaboration yields exponential returns. The coalition builder wields the greatest influence, but also bears the heaviest responsibility. You must ensure fairness, handle conflicts with diplomatic finesse, and keep the collective focused on the common goal. Done well, the coalition becomes a fortress of shared power. Done poorly, it collapses under competing interests and resentments. Across these archetypes runs a single thread: clarity. Machiavelli's method thrives on transparency of purpose. Alliances flourish when expectations are stated, contributions are acknowledged, and exit strategies are understood. It sounds counterintuitive. Wouldn't explicit agreements feel cold, contractual, even detract from the warmth of relationship? In practice, ambiguity breeds misunderstanding. When roles and stakes remain unspoken, resentments fester in the shadows. By contrast, a frank conversation about what you and your ally hope to achieve, and what each of you will do if circumstances change, creates a shared map for navigating both smooth waters and rough seas. You're not binding yourself to another's whims, you're signing up for a journey of mutual benefit, fully aware of the conditions. Imagine negotiating an alliance with a high-performing colleague whose network you covet. An ambiguous "let's collaborate sometime" won't suffice. Instead, propose a specific pilot project, define objectives, timelines, and each person's deliverables. Outline what success looks like, perhaps a joint presentation to leadership, a co-authored white paper, or a shared workshop. Discuss how you'll handle delays or shifting priorities. Agree on how you'll credit each other's work. Even address what happens if either of you decides to step away. That level of detail may feel awkward at first, but it builds trust by showing you respect each other's time and ambitions. It transforms a casual acquaintance into a strategic connection, one that fuels both autonomy and alliance. Of course, not every relationship requires a written contract. Many alliances bloom from informal exchanges, a timely introduction, a thoughtful critique, a shared victory, and a high-stakes negotiation. But the principles remain: reciprocal advantage, transparent expectations, and clear boundaries. The collaborator may emerge from a casual coffee chat that turns into weeks of shared brainstorming. The patron may offer support after your insightful question in a public forum catches their eye. The coalition builder may form around a serendipitous problem someone mentions in a Slack channel, inspiring you to rally experts across departments. Whether formal or informal, each alliance should be purposeful, not accidental. Weigh each potential ally against 3 questions. What unique value do they bring? What will they expect in return? How can you preserve your autonomy within this relationship? If any answer feels one-sided, if you sense you'll give far more than you'll receive, or that their expectations might outgrow your capacity, pause. A strategic retreat is not a failure, it's an act of self-preservation. You can always circle back when circumstances shift or seek a different form of alliance that better safeguards your independence. The existential dilemma at the heart of alliances boils down to this: dependence versus interdependence. True interdependence uplifts both parties, false dependence chains one to the other. You want to cultivate networks that function like living ecosystems, diverse, resilient, and responsive, rather than web-like traps where a single cut severs everything. Machiavellian wisdom reminds us that power is best retained when you never place all your eggs in one basket. Diversify your alliances. Keep expanding your circle. Maintain a healthy flow of resources, information, reputation, support through multiple channels. In doing so, you build redundancy into your influence strategy. If one alliance frays, others remain intact, preventing any collapse of your personal sovereignty. Practical steps can help you put this into practice. Start by mapping your current network. List collaborators, patrons, and coalition projects. For each, jot down the specific benefits you receive, the contributions you've made, and any potential areas of over-reliance. Identify gaps, domains where you lack support, and brainstorm who could fill them. Look for people whose strengths complement your blind spots, whose resources you need but whose demands won't overwhelm you. Then, reach out with a clear proposition, a short meeting to explore shared interests, a proposal for a small joint endeavor, or an offer to help with one of their initiatives. Pitch it as a mutual opportunity, not a favor-seeking request. As you nurture these alliances, monitor their health. Every few weeks, check in, both on the relationship's outcomes and on whether mutual expectations remain aligned. Celebrate successes together. Address frustrations candidly, reframing issues as puzzles to solve rather than accusations to hurl. If you sense an imbalance, too much giving, too little getting, rekindle the conversation early. Adjust the terms if needed or gracefully withdraw if the partnership no longer serves both sides. By treating alliances as living organisms requiring care, you avoid the pitfalls of resentment and entanglement. Over time, you'll notice a profound shift. Tasks that once felt like uphill battles become collaborative adventures. Invitations to high-impact projects arrive not because you chase them, but because your network recognizes your value and invites you in. You never lose your edge because you're not relying on a single mentor or a fixed set of allies. Instead, you've constructed a web of strategic connections that bolsters your autonomy and magnifies your influence. You become the nucleus around which others orbit, not because you force them to, but because you offer genuine reciprocal advantages. Yet remember, alliances are never static. They evolve as priorities change, as people move on, as markets shift. What began as a thriving collaboration may wane if one party's focus diverges. What seemed like a supportive patronage may turn stifling if the sponsor grows insecure. A coalition may splinter if its purpose becomes unclear. Staying vigilant means continually reassessing. Does this relationship still serve my strategic goals? Have my goals shifted? Is there a new form of alliance better suited to my current trajectory? By asking these questions, you ensure your web of partnerships remains adaptive, fluid, and aligned with your sovereignty. Now pause to reflect. Who in your circle truly elevates your autonomy? Which alliances feed your momentum, and which quietly siphon your energy? Identify one relationship to strengthen, perhaps a collaborator who's on the verge of a breakthrough but could use your expertise, or a potential patron who's shown interest but needs a clear proposal. Reach out with a plan that offers immediate value and outlines mutual benefits. Simultaneously, recognize one tie that has grown burdensome, maybe an obligation to reciprocate favors you no longer can afford. Give yourself permission to recalibrate, renegotiate responsibilities, or gracefully bow out. As you refine your network, you'll discover that alliances not only amplify your influence but also deepen your resilience. No solitary leader can foresee every twist of fate. By spreading your bets across collaborators, patrons, and coalitions, you create a robust ecosystem in which power circulates freely, sustaining your autonomy even when individual ties fray. This is the true genius of Machiavelli's approach, not to hoard power in isolation, but to cultivate a fertile network in which influence pulses like a living current. And yet, alliances are only one pillar of your sovereignty. The next lever of mastery awaits: anticipation and preemption, the art of shaping reality before events unfold. When you combine strategic alliances with the ability to predict and guide outcomes, you step into a realm of nearly unassailable influence. In the coming section, you'll learn how to read intentions as precisely as you've learned to read expressions, and how a disciplined pause can transform uncertainty into opportunity. The game is about to change, and anticipation will be your ultimate leverage. Part 5, Anticipation and Preemption, the art of influence. Imagine stepping onto a chessboard long before the first pieces ever move. You've studied your opponent's opening repertoire, noticed the slight tilt of their shoulder when they favor a defensive setup, sensed the subtlest shift in their breathing as they contemplate an aggressive gambit. In human affairs, the same principle applies. Influence isn't born in the moment you speak. It takes root in the moments you spend observing, deducing, and quietly shaping expectations. By the time words escape your lips, the outcome often feels already decided. Machiavelli understood this more than 5 centuries ago. He wrote that the wise ruler foresees crises before they erupt, laying traps and opening doors in advance so that when events unfold, they unfold on his terms. In our fast-paced world, anticipation and preemption are the ultimate leverage, turning every handshake, every email, every glance into another opportunity to guide reality toward your design. The universal challenge is that most people live on the surface of time, reacting to whatever lands on their desk or hits their inbox. They awaken to crisis calls and fire drills, scrambling to extinguish one spark after another. Meanwhile, those who master anticipation dwell beneath that frantic current. They see the undercurrents, the gathering clouds of intention that presage tomorrow's challenges, and they prepare. This isn't about mystical foresight or staring at crystal balls. It's disciplined pattern recognition, combined with a strategic pause that converts foreknowledge into decisive action. Think of the seasoned negotiator who spots the slight flush in a counterpart's cheeks at an aggressive concession, then calmly shifts the topic to a terrain where they hold the stronger hand. Or the startup founder who senses a pivot in market sentiment and quietly realigns resources before competitors even sniff the change. They don't wait for events to demand their response, they dictate the terms before the curtain rises. At the heart of anticipation lies a deceptively simple mindset shift, from living in the moment to curating the moments to come. It starts with disciplined observation, cataloging microsignals, mapping habitual patterns, and noting how intentions reveal themselves in tiniest gestures. Does your colleague perk up when you mention budget cuts? Does your client's voice soften when you frame a proposal around security rather than growth? Does a team member flinch when you ask for feedback on their pet project? Each of these clues is a piece of intelligence, an early warning system for desires and anxieties. The trick is to gather these data points without becoming paranoid. Treat them as puzzle fragments, not as proof of some grand conspiracy. With practice, you begin to predict choices before they materialize, to anticipate objections before they are voiced, to preempt resistance by addressing it in your initial framing. Once you've honed the art of gathering signals, the next ingredient is disciplined questioning, a preemptive strike that reframes the narrative before others can lock in their positions. A well-timed question can do more to shape an agenda than a 3-hour presentation. Imagine entering a meeting and opening with, "What would make today's discussion most valuable for you?" Instead of diving into your own checklist, you've invited the group to reveal their priorities. Having that map in hand, you proceed on their terrain, aligning your proposals with their unstated needs. They feel heard, their guard lowers, and your agenda slides in unopposed. This strategic pause, pausing to ask before prescribing, transforms you from another voice in the room to the orchestrator of the conversation. You're no longer playing catch-up, you're setting the stage. There's an existential twist here. Anticipation demands both humility and audacity. Humility to admit you don't yet know the full picture, to approach situations as a curious investigator rather than a presumptuous expert. Audacity to intervene, to steer dialogue toward outcomes you deem most fitting, even when you've only glimpsed the outlines of what lies ahead. Machiavelli would remind you that hesitation is the enemy of power. Yet overzealousness, charging forward without a clear read, leaves you exposed. The sweet spot lies in that disciplined pause, enough gathering of intelligence to inform your move, yet swift enough that you claim the initiative before someone else does. It's a dance between insight and action, between listening and leading, between seeing tomorrow's board and placing your piece today. Consider the story of Aisha, a project lead in a fast-growing marketing agency. She noticed that every time she proposed shifting resources from one campaign to another, her director hemmed and hawed, citing client sensitivities. Rather than presenting a fully fleshed reallocation plan, she paused at the start of their next one-on-one and simply asked, "If I could create a smoother transition between Campaign A and Campaign B without upsetting any existing agreements, what would that look like for you?" The question itself revealed unspoken constraints, the client's dislike of abrupt changes, and invited her director to co-design the solution. Aisha preempted objections by addressing the core worry before it ever crystallized, earning swift approval for a phased shift that improved overall ROI. Her peers began to marvel at how she always seemed 2 steps ahead, never caught flat-footed by resistance. Prediction also extends to self-management. The fiercest battles often happen within, when unexpected challenges trigger stress reactions that undermine our best plans. You can't shape events in the world if you're busy fighting your own inner turmoil. Anticipation demands forecasting your emotional weather as well, early signs of burnout, creeping doubt, spikes of impatience. By monitoring your internal barometer, you can preempt collapses in energy or focus. Maybe you schedule a midday breather when you know your willpower wanes. Maybe you block out time for reflection before a major pitch to calm creeping anxiety. These preemptive moves ensure that when external pressures hit, you're poised rather than panicked, poised rather than reactive. But perhaps the most potent form of preemption is the art of narrative seeding, planting ideas so early that they take root as if they were the audience's own. Before delivering a presentation, you share preliminary insights with key stakeholders, letting them mull over your proposals in private. When the day arrives, they've already mentally warmed to the concepts, even begun to champion them. You're no longer the outsider pitching an idea, you're the messenger reinforcing a vision they've already consented to. This tactic, as Machiavelli knew, relies on gradual exposure and repeated framing, an almost subliminal conditioning of expectations. It transforms resistance into momentum because people rally around ideas they helped incubate. In digital contexts, anticipation takes on new forms, monitoring social channels for shifts in sentiment, setting up custom alerts for industry trends, analyzing competitor movements before they become public. A well-timed tweet, a pre-written email campaign cued to launch at just the right hour, a targeted outreach to a potential ally on the morning they wake up to a trending topic, these calculated moves shape narratives at scale. You are no longer casting messages into the void, you are delivering them at the crossroads of relevance and receptivity. Preemption at a digital level means bending the arc of collective attention toward your cause, capitalizing on windows of opportunity others haven't even spotted. Yet anticipation is a skill that demands ethical calibration. If you lean too heavily on psychological insights without regard for autonomy, you risk manipulation, twisting perceptions to serve ends that betray trust. Long-term influence isn't built on deception, it's built on guiding others in directions that align with their own values and needs. The difference between strategic foresight and exploitative coercion lies in your intent. Ask yourself, are you preempting objections to help people see paths that truly benefit them? Or are you setting traps to bend outcomes strictly to your advantage? The noblest applications of anticipation foster environments where everyone wins, where foresight aligns with mutual progress. As you refine these practices, you'll notice a shift in how people respond even to the hint of your presence. Meetings start punctually because attendees know you value their time. Emails receive replies faster because you've anticipated their priorities and addressed them up front. Conversations veer toward your chosen terrain because you've skillfully seeded the questions that guide the narrative. And when surprises do erupt, as they inevitably will, you're never caught entirely off guard. You've set up contingency plans, fallback options, and pre-approved pathways that let you adapt fluidly. The world stops feeling like a series of reactive crises and becomes a canvas you shape with informed intention. Now pause to reflect. What patterns are you missing? Which recurring scenarios keep catching you unprepared? Identify one domain, perhaps budget negotiations, perhaps client engagements, perhaps internal team dynamics, and commit to documenting every microsignal you encounter over the next week. Note recurring phrases, tonal shifts, behavioral tics. Then design a single preemptive question or move that addresses the underlying concern before it surfaces. Test it in a low-stakes setting, track how people respond, refine your approach, and scale it up. In doing so, you'll take the first step toward mastering the art of preemption. This ability to see tomorrow's moves and shape today's actions is the hinge that unlocks true strategic freedom. It elevates you from a participant in the game to the architect of its rules, silent yet decisive, proactive rather than passive, always 2 steps ahead. And when you combine this anticipatory dexterity with the alliances you've forged, the emotional mastery you've cultivated, and the persona you've sculpted, you become a force that reshapes events before they can take shape around you. No longer do you simply weather storms, you engineer the climate. But anticipation alone does not seal your sovereignty. There remains one final pivot, the daily ritual that cements your newfound mastery into an unshakable habit. It's here you'll transform these strategic insights into instinctive actions, anchoring your presence so deeply that each day reinforces your authority until domination by anyone else becomes unthinkable. In the next part, we'll reveal that concise, powerful routine, your 25-minute forging of freedom, ensuring that every sunrise finds you ever more poised, ever more prepared, and ever more sovereign over your own destiny. Part 6, the final pivot, cementing your sovereignty. You have walked the hidden corridors of power, learning to read the unspoken languages of gesture, tone, and alliance. You have sculpted a presence that commands respect before a single word escapes your lips. You have mastered the alchemy of emotion, turning every surge of anger or doubt into a spark of strategic clarity. You have built a resilient network of collaborators, patrons, and coalition partners who amplify your reach without chaining your will. You have learned to anticipate intentions, to plant the seeds of your own narrative, and to preempt objections before they even surface. Yet all these victories, as dazzling as they are, risk fading like footprints in the sand unless they are woven into the texture of your daily life. This final pivot, the 25-minute ritual you practice each morning, cements your sovereignty. It transforms scattered tactics into a single, seamless habit that anchors your authority, day after day, until the idea of being dominated by anyone becomes unthinkable. Imagine waking before dawn, the city still quiet, the horizon soft with the promise of possibility. You rise and settle into a simple chair, no grand altar, no elaborate equipment, only the seat beneath you and the breath within you. The minute hand on your watch hovers above 0, and you inhale. For the next 25 minutes, you become both strategist and sovereign, turning inward to recharge the fortress of your self-rule. This is not a meditation for escape, nor a rote checklist for productivity. It is a ritual of integration, a living synthesis of every insight you have acquired. Here, perception, persona, emotion, alliance, and anticipation converge in a ceremony of daily renewal. By the time you step out into the world, you are not merely prepared, you are anchored, calibrated, and ready to reclaim any territory that attempts to slip through your grasp. The first phase, minutes 1 through 5, is dedicated to reconnaissance of the mind. You close your eyes and trace the contours of your inner landscape. What currents stir within? What anxieties or doubts are waiting in the shadows? You name each sensation. Here is impatience. There is a flicker of self-criticism, not to judge, but to gather data. This moment of observation mirrors your earlier work mapping the invisible battlefield. Only now, the terrain is your own psyche. By cataloging these internal signals each morning, you sharpen the reflex that catches emotional surges before they hijack your day. You practice the same split-second pause, observe, contain, redirect, that you applied under pressure in every high-stakes scenario. But here, in the sanctuary of dawn, you refine that skill without crisis bearing down, transforming it into a muscle memory for whatever storms may arise. At the close of the 5th minute, you transition seamlessly into posture and presence. You open your eyes and sit taller, aligning spine, shoulders, and neck, as if threading an invisible cord from your tailbone to the crown of your head. You inhale again, this time with intention. Each breath becomes an affirmation of your sovereign presence. You feel the stability radiate from your core, the calm confidence that needs no audience to validate it. Then, with eyes still open, you practice a shift into the empathic strategist, softening your gaze, letting compassion flood your awareness, reminding yourself of the people whose lives are intertwined with yours. You allow a moment for gratitude, for mentors, for collaborators, for even the rivals who sharpened your edge. Finally, you let a glimmer of the enigmatic catalyst roll across your expression, a small, playful smile, a spark in your pupils that hints at depths unexplored. In these minutes, you cycle through your 3 personae, anchoring each in muscle, breath, and intention, so that when life summons any one of them, you answer without hesitation. By minute 12, your internal compass is aligned, and you turn your attention to alliances. You open a small journal or digital note, scanning yesterday's connections, the email you promised to send, the colleague you wanted to thank for their insight, the potential collaborator you meant to invite for coffee. You draft brief messages, concise, genuine, and purposeful, reaching out in ways that reinforce mutual benefit. This practice ensures that your network remains alive, dynamic, and balanced. No relationship is left to drift into stagnation or obligation. Each note is a thread woven into the living tapestry of interdependence, binding others to your orbit not by coercion but by the reciprocal value you offer. As you write, you reinforce the principle that your sovereignty thrives not in isolation but in the fertile soil of well-tended alliances. At minute 15, you turn the page to anticipation. You bring to mind today's most pressing challenges, a looming presentation, a difficult conversation, a deadline that demands creative energy, and you sketch, in bullet form, the signals you expect to encounter. You recall the patterns you've observed, the client who grows tense when cost is mentioned, the teammate who lights up when innovation is framed as collaboration, the partner who withdraws at the first hint of criticism. For each, you jot a preemptive question or framing that steers the interaction before objections harden. You imagine yourself posing that question, setting the narrative terrain, guiding the dialogue toward productive territory. In this brief exercise, your mind leaps ahead of the calendar, choreographing the day's potential conflicts and opportunities with a conductor's grace. You leave no moment to chance. Every encounter becomes another chess move you design in advance. Minutes 18 through 20 handle integration. You close the journal and shift into reflection mode, scanning your core intentions. Who do you choose to be in each context today? The calm sovereign in the boardroom, the empathetic strategist in team huddles, the enigmatic catalyst in networking events, the composed alchemist in emotional crosscurrents, the collaborative architect in alliances, and the preemptive planner in every negotiation. You visualize each scene in quick flashes, 5 or 6 mental snapshots that link context to persona to outcome. You feel the emotional tones, the physical postures, the tonal subtleties of speech. You rehearse your opening lines, your questions, your moments of silence, and your strategic pauses. Each visualization deepens neural pathways, making reflexes more reliable when reality presses in. This phase cements the integrated self you have worked toward, a single, coherent identity that retains flexibility and purpose in every sphere. In the final stretch, minutes 22 to 25, you seal the ritual with a simple vow, a succinct declaration of your daily mission, cast in terms that resonate with both power and humanity. You record it as a question: what will I do today to ensure no one can ever dominate my will? Then answer it in 1 or 2 sentences. I will enter every meeting with calm confidence, I will listen more than I speak, and I will frame each proposal around shared benefit. You may speak these lines aloud or write them at the bottom of your journal page. This question becomes the lodestone for your actions, a prompt you revisit whenever you feel your focus slipping. By closing with this reflective affirmation, you bind the ritual's insights to your conscious intent and signal to your subconscious that you value the sovereignty you cultivate. As the ritual concludes, you sit in silence for a moment, eyes open or closed depending on your preference, breathing deeply, feeling the solidity of your presence. You stand and stretch, perhaps lifting your arms overhead or rolling your shoulders, emerging from the practice like a knight rising from around a round table, geared, centered, unshakable. The 25 minutes have passed, but their effects ripple outward through every hour that follows. You carry with you enhanced perception, a sculpted persona, emotional mastery, nurtured alliances, and anticipatory clarity, all woven into a seamless tapestry of self-governance. This daily ritual is your practical answer to the existential dilemma: how to sustain consistent power without sacrificing genuine humanity. By embedding empathy and gratitude into your posture practice, by linking alliance maintenance with clear, reciprocal value, by framing your anticipatory strategies around mutual benefit, you ensure that your sovereignty remains both strong and humane. The narrative twist is that the ultimate act of authority is not dominating others but mastering yourself, guiding your own intentions with integrity, and weaving every encounter into a testament of your autonomy. In the crucible of this ritual, you forge not a tyrant, but a leader whose power arises from self-governance, compassion, and foresight. Perhaps you wondered whether you could maintain such disciplined practice amid the daily swirl of emails, meetings, and demands. The truth is that nothing cements knowledge and skill like habit. 25 minutes each morning, no more, yields compounding returns. Each day's practice reinforces the neural pathways that make your strategic moves instinctive. Each morning's reflection deepens your emotional resilience. Each journaled alliance note keeps your network alive and aligned. And each anticipatory sketch primes you to enter conversations not on the defensive, but as the one who sets the agenda. Over weeks, months, and years, this ritual transforms transient victories into an enduring state of self-rule. Now, pause and ask yourself, what will your life look like when no one can ever dominate you again? Can you imagine the freedom of walking into any room, virtual or physical, knowing that your presence alone confers authority? Picture the calm resilience you'll summon when negotiations heat up, the poised clarity you'll bring to high-pressure moments, the genuine connections you'll forge with allies drawn to your balanced humanity. This ritual is your 25-minute forge, the crucible in which your sovereignty is tempered and made unbreakable. As the days accumulate, you'll find that power no longer feels like an external prize to be seized, but like an internal resource to be cultivated. You'll wake with anticipation instead of dread, engage with curiosity instead of fear, and navigate every alliance with the confident ease of someone who knows both the rules of the game and how to rewrite them. And when the world tries to pull you off course, you'll have your ritual to return to, a reliable compass that brings you home to your own authority. Your sovereignty awaits. The dawn of each day beckons you to reclaim your agency, to reinforce the fortress you've built within, and to step into the world as its undisputed architect. In just 25 minutes, you'll enact the final pivot that cements every insight into an unshakable habit. And as you close your eyes each night, you will rest not in the refuge of escape, but in the quiet confidence of one who governs themselves with integrity, foresight, and grace. The journey does not end here. It evolves anew with every sunrise. Now, rise and meet your own sovereignty. You have carried yourself through hidden currents, sculpted your outward bearing, harnessed your feelings, woven reciprocal bonds, anticipated every turn, and anchored it all in a daily ritual. Now, standing at the threshold of your own unshakable authority, it's time to reflect on the life you are forging, and to decide, once and for all, whether you will claim the mantle of your own sovereignty. Until this moment, power may have felt like an external prize, tossed by circumstance or handed down by others. But you've learned that the true wellspring of influence flows from within, fed by the clarity of perception, the strength of presence, the discipline of emotional alchemy, the breadth of strategic alliances, the foresight of anticipation, and the consistency of a 25-minute forging each dawn. Ask yourself now, will you carry these lessons like a torch, lighting every room you enter? Or will they lie dormant, buried beneath the noise of routine? Imagine, for a moment, walking into your next meeting with the unshakable calm of the sovereign presence you cultivated. You will not shrink when challenged. You will not rush to fill silences. Instead, you will arrive, spine alight, gaze steady, as the architect of the conversation. The aura you project will magnetize attention, not because you demand it, but because you embody a quiet command. And when the first question rolls your way, you will ask your preemptive query, guiding the discussion toward fertile ground before objections take root. In that instant, you become not a participant, but the unseen hand that shapes outcomes. That's the power of integration, when every nuance of perception and persona converges in a single, deliberate moment. Elsewhere, in the lulls between boardroom battles, you'll draw upon the empathic strategist within. You'll remember the faces that light up when you mirror their hopes, the nods that soften barriers when you listen with genuine curiosity. You'll lean in with warmth, offering mutual benefit instead of one-sided demands. And as you steer alliances toward shared victories, you'll feel the invisible threads of interdependence strengthen, ties woven from transparent expectations and reciprocal advantage. No more gilded cages, no more hollow promises. Your network will hum with collective momentum, each collaborator and patron aligned with your goals, bolstered by the clear agreements you've crafted together. When emotion rises, anger, doubt, fear, you will greet it as a familiar guest, no longer a trespasser in your mind. You will note its color, contain its surge, redirect its energy into a pointed question or a creative solution. That inner tremor that once shattered your composure will become a well of focus, sharpening your responses rather than derailing them. Over time, those moments of emotional mastery solidify into instinct, so that under pressure you stand not as prey to your feelings, but as the calm eye in any storm. You become the strategist who transforms chaos into clarity, tension into opportunity, reacting not with panic but with purpose. And what of anticipation? You will watch the world not from the surface, but from the depths, gathering microsignals, mapping patterns, sketching preemptive moves long before the first word is ever spoken. You will frame questions that set the agenda, seed narratives that take root, and prepare contingency plans that give you room to maneuver when uncertainties arise. Emails will be crafted with an eye toward your recipient's hidden priorities. Conversations will begin with strategic pauses that invite others to reveal their true stakes. Even your daily commute will become a reconnaissance mission, tuning your senses to the subtlest shifts in tone and posture. This practice of foresight will render surprises manageable and elevate you from reactive spectator to proactive architect. None of this happens by accident. Each sunrise, you will carve out 25 uninterrupted minutes for your ritual, a sanctuary of self-renewal. You will sit, breathe, observe the undercurrents of your own mind, cycle through your personae, send a few carefully crafted notes to key allies, sketch the day's preemptive moves, and affirm your mission in a single, powerful vow. In that crucible of dawn, you will temper your resolve, stitch together every strategic insight, and seal your intent with the quiet conviction of one who governs the self. By day's end, you will have lived your sovereignty rather than merely talked about it. Habit will transform tactics into second nature, and before long, the idea of being dominated by anyone, even by your own doubts, will feel impossible. Now, let's create your personal sovereignty checklist, the blueprint you'll carry forward. First, perception. Will you scan each environment for its social, emotional, and professional currents before engaging? Second, persona. Which mask, sovereign presence, empathic strategist, or enigmatic catalyst will serve you best in your next key interaction? Third, emotion. Can you observe, contain, and redirect the first stirrings of reactive intensity? Fourth, alliance. Which three people in your network most amplify your autonomy, and who might you reach out to today with genuine, mutual value? Fifth, anticipation. What patterns are you tracking this week, and which preemptive question will you pose in your next meeting? Sixth, ritual. Can you commit to 25 minutes of integrated practice each morning, no matter how urgent the world becomes? Carry this checklist with you, write it on a card, screenshot it on your phone, or whisper it to yourself before key moments. Let it be both reminder and challenge, a living document that evolves as you evolve. Each time you check a box, you reinforce the neural pathways of strategic mastery. Each time you hesitate, you reveal an area ready for deeper excavation. And as you refine your checklist, you'll notice a growing gap between your old self, uncertain, reactive, bound by invisible currents, and the emerging sovereign, poised, proactive, and free. Still, a final question lingers. Will you accept the mantle of your own authority? True dominion begins not by conquering others, but by mastering yourself. It requires humility to confront the blind spots you've long ignored, and audacity to reshape every moment in service of your highest purpose. It demands that you carry gratitude alongside confidence, empathy alongside foresight, and generosity alongside self-governance. It calls on you to build alliances without surrendering autonomy, to anticipate without manipulating, to project power without sacrificing humanity. This is the paradox at the heart of genuine sovereignty, strength born of self-knowledge, authority tempered by compassion, freedom forged in daily ritual. Imagine the life this practice invites. Picture yourself in a negotiation so seamless it feels like dance. Each question anticipates an unspoken need. Each concession opens space for mutual gain. Each silence lands like a note in a symphony you conduct. Envision a network of collaborators who call on you because they trust not only your competence but your integrity, patrons who sponsor you because they believe in your vision, coalitions that rally around your initiatives because they see their own aspirations reflected in your cause. Feel the calm certainty that even the fiercest provocations will fail to shake, because you have learned to transform every emotional flashpoint into a strategic advantage. Think too of the quieter moments, morning light creeping through your window as you complete your ritual, journal entries that trace your growth, gratitude notes that deepen your connections, mental rehearsals that steel your resolve. In those minutes, you are both student and teacher, strategist and sovereign, aligning your entire being with the highest expression of your potential. The world may demand your attention in 100 directions, but you will carry inside you a grounding compass, calibrated to your own North Star. And yet, freedom is not a static state, it's a dynamic frontier, an ever-expanding realm of possibility. As you conquer one arena of life, another will beckon, the delicate dance of intimate relationships, the uncharted waters of creative endeavors, the high-stakes theater of leadership roles you've only dreamed of. Each new venture will test your mastery in fresh ways, revealing areas where the checklist needs refinement, the ritual demands deeper commitment, or the masks require more authentic integration. Embrace these challenges as invitations to grow, not as threats to your authority. Sovereignty thrives on growth. It is the process of continual self-creation rather than a fixed label. Before you step into your next arena, pause and reflect. Which domain of your life most calls out for liberation? Is it the boardroom where respect still feels tenuous? The social circles where your voice whispers instead of echoes? The inner critic that still wields its whip at the flicker of self-doubt? Or perhaps the alliances you've neglected, the patterns you've yet to decode, the ritual minutes you've skipped when urgency felt more pressing. Name that domain now, and commit to applying your Machiavellian roadmap to it. Tell yourself, I will not be dominated here. Then, open your sovereignty checklist, pick the relevant items, and schedule your 25-minute session for tomorrow's dawn. In days to come, as you integrate these practices, you will look back on this moment as the pivot point, the moment you decided that no one, neither external nemesis nor inner critic, would ever again define the boundaries of your freedom. You will wake with a quiet smile, revisit your checklist, and step into the world with an unwavering conviction that your agency is yours to guard, your influence yours to wield wisely, and your destiny yours to script. You will measure your freedom not in the absence of challenges, but in the clarity of your response, the depth of your connections, and the steadfastness of your ritual. So now, the decision rests with you. Will you walk forward, checklist in hand, into the vast frontier of your own potential? Will you commit to the daily crucible that cements every hard-won insight into the living architecture of your self-rule? Will you embrace the paradox of strength and compassion, authority and empathy, foresight and spontaneity? Will you accept the mantle of your own sovereignty, knowing that true power flows from mastery of the self, not dominion over others? The horizon stretches before you, an expanse of rooms to enter, conversations to shape, alliances to forge, emotions to alchemize, futures to preempt. Which arena will you conquer first? How will you measure your freedom? The answers lie not in distant tomorrows, but in the seed you plant this very moment. Rise to the challenge. Claim your sovereignty. Let the forging begin.